Welcome back to Let's Talk with me, Sharad Kuttan. My guest, James Chin, Professor of Political Science at University of Tasmania. He's the Director of the Asia Institute there. He, of course, is a long-time commentator on Malaysian politics, and we've had a very exciting year with the May 9th elections. Sarawak does not align its state elections to the federal elections. It last went to the state elections were last held in 2016. So officially, about 5 years, 2021 is the possible next date. Do you think it's likely that this government, now in opposition, at least on a federal level, is going to take it all the way up to 2021?
Well, I think it's very difficult to guess what the government will do. I'm talking about the state government. I think partly the reason why it's very difficult to guess the date of the election is because they will be keeping a very close eye on what Pakatan Harapan would do at the federal level in relation to Sarawak. So, for example, one of the things that's on their political radar now is that, is Pakatan Harapan going to disturb the Muslim Bumiputera vote? So they're very worried about Bersatu coming to Sarawak. If Bersatu comes to Sarawak and gains traction, then it may be that they'll be forced to call an early general election. That's one of the issues.
Can you just, before we get into the other issues, wasn't it true that under some sort of contract between Dr. Mahathir and the former Chief Minister of Sarawak, TAIB MAHMUD, that UMNO would never come into the state? Is that true? I mean, that's often bandied about.
Yes, that is true. There was an exchange of letters between Mahathir and TAIB MAHMUD. Like I said earlier, the reason why Mahathir never had to worry about Sarawak was because Sarawak was really the Barisan Nasional vote bank. They keep sending 20, 30 MPs to Kuala Lumpur under the Barisan Nasional flag. So, yes, it is true. There was an exchange of letters between TAIB and Mahathir. But you have to remember that agreement is no longer valid because we're not talking about UMNO anymore. We're talking about Bersatu.
Okay. There are other players, of course, like DAP. We talked about how DAP brands itself as a kind of indigenous or local political party. What about PKR? I mean, how do they stand within the landscape? We know now, because there are major fight between the aspirants for the deputy position in PKR, both Rafizi Ramli and Azmin Ali, fighting it out there in Sabah and Sarawak, and a lot of talk about potential or alleged fraud or money flowing, and in fact, even some violence, not too much, but some. Is PKR doing well in Sarawak?
I think the momentum is on the whole Pakatan Harapan Sarawak rather than individual parties. I think the best way to understand the political scenario in Sarawak is basically to divide Sarawak into three different, very distinct voting segments. You got the Muslim majority seats, you have the urban seats, primarily Chinese, but there are important pockets of Dayak voters there, plus the rural Dayak voters, rural seats. So the real contest will probably be in the Dayak seats. So whoever takes the Dayak seats will probably decide the outcome of the government, because the current reading is that PBB, the mainstay of the Sarawak GPS, will probably hang on to most of the Malay Muslim seats. The Chinese is very likely to support the DAP or Pakatan Harapan, so it's only the Dayak seats that's up in the air. Among the Dayak seats, the most shaky one, in my view, at the current moment, will probably be the Bidayu seats.
Can you tell us, for people from the peninsula who don't understand what that actually even means, I mean, the ethnic group, the Bidayu people, what does it mean for the Bidayu seats to be up for grabs?
What this means is that if PKR and DAP make major inroads into the Dayak seats, it means they will have enough seats. There's 82 seats in the Sarawak State Assembly. The magic figure is 41, 42. Right now, the Chinese seats or the safe DAP seats is probably around 15 to 20. So they just need to double the numbers and they may be able to capture the next Sarawak state government.
And there's something in the trends that you saw for the 14th general election. Does it tell us anything about how voting might go if, say, an election is held soon?
Not really. Part of the reasons why they have separated the state election from the federal election is that they want the federal election to be basically about federal issues and the state elections about state issues. But because Pakatan has won the federal government now, there is a federal machinery in Sarawak. So they're able to go down to the ground and reinforce the Pakatan brand. And I think for most people in that community, they see this as an important turning point, and that if they go to Pakatan, they may get more out of Pakatan rather than the GPS government, who they've been supporting for the past 50 years.
Okay, coming back to the deeply ironic situation of both sides having, in some ways, both being of the same, flying the same flag, the state nationalist flag. But you have on the GPS side people with a record. They were in government and are still in government, been for decades. What did they actually deliver on the state nationalist agenda? People could legitimately question them on that record. Now, on the Pakatan side, they actually are in power in the federal, so people can also hold them to account, like, so now you're taking power, but then what have you really delivered? So how is this going even to work out? It used to be great to be in opposition because you could promise the world, right? You could promise the sun and the moon.
Sure. So in terms of the GPS, one of the problems with the narrative about being state nationalist is that it was the very same parties who gave up their power during the first MAHMUD administration. So the narrative going forward is that, yes, we made a mistake. We should have stood up for Sarawak, especially in 1976 when the Constitution was amended. But the argument goes that this was done before I became the YB. This was done by the previous generation of YB, so you can't blame me. Now that I'm aware of the issues, I will fight for Sarawak. The other common argument put up by the GPS was that in those days, Mahathir was just too strong. He had the ISA, all sorts of acts, and it was not possible for us to fight for Sarawak. Now the situation is different. We got social media. We are living in new Malaysia, and therefore the right to speak out. And because we know this is an issue, we will fight for Sarawak. So that's the narrative. The one for Pakatan is slightly different. For Pakatan, it's all about the promise of a brand new Sarawak if they capture the Sarawak government. So the people's expectation of Pakatan is slightly different. They're saying that we have to watch carefully. Is Pakatan capable of bringing the entire country forward in the next 2 years? And also, is Pakatan capable of bringing development through the federal agency into the rural areas? If they can show that they can bring the country forward, plus bring some form of development into rural areas of Sarawak through the federal machinery, then they stand a very good chance.
I do want to talk about leadership. Adnan Salim, the late chief minister, kind of stood out as a Sarawakian leader at some point because of his statements about where the state wanted to go. He, unfortunately, had a very short tenure. Do you see anybody of his stature on the Sarawakian stage from either side of the divide that we should be looking at when we think about Sarawak and its politics?
No, I think Adnan was a unique figure in the sense that he came in a very unique time, and he played very strongly the Sarawak for Sarawakians mantra. And I think he was very successful because you have to remember he was the first one who said this after such a long time. So he had a lot of goodwill. And the way I put it in terms of analogy is that this was exactly what happened to Pak La. When Pak La came in 2004, there was so much goodwill towards him because you were living after 20 years of strongman rule. So Adnan came in exactly the same way. He took over from somebody who stayed for a very long time, in fact, more than 30 years. And suddenly he said that Sarawak is for Sarawakians. So I think he received a very unique time in history, and he received special support because of that situation. So today's situation is completely different.
Elephant in the room, TAIB MAHMUD is still there. He hasn't left the stage. He's been elevated. Many things surrounding his person haven't been investigated. Does he cast a long shadow over Sarawak politics?
Yes, he casts a very long shadow, but you have to remember it is very, very difficult for the opposition to criticize TAIB MAHMUD because he is the TYT, and there are certain things that you can't do. For example, certain parts of the Sedition Act can be used if you criticize the TYT on certain issues.
Have they appealed to the federal government to do something about those allegations of corruption that kind of swirl around the man?
There has been many appeals. In fact, there's been additional police reports made after the 9th of May for further investigations to be done. Any
likelihood that they will happen?
It's difficult to say now, simply because I think there's a strong wait-and-see attitude now, because I think both sides are trying to design their election strategy, And I think it's widely understood that, since he's no longer standing, the more important thing is to win the next state election. Now, if you were to attack him and use him as the only issue, it may not work, simply because he says that I'm no longer involved actively in politics. How do you use me as the main issue anymore when I'm no longer the chief minister?
Okay. He used to have a very popular name. I think a reference to his white hair was used during his time, wasn't it, as chief minister?
Yes, the people in Sarawak use the Hokkien word pekmore.
Pekmore. Okay. Very quickly, a book you could recommend for all of us who want to know more about the Malaysia Agreement 1963. What would you say, Professor James Chin?
Oh, it's very simple. I won't promote my own book. But
Go ahead and do it. So.
I'll simply ask them to buy, there's lots of books out there where they reprint the 3 original reports that led to the formation of Malaysia. So there are many books out there. And in fact, I would tell your viewers right now, don't bother spending money, because all the major reports written that led to the Federation of Malaysia, you can download it for free on the internet.
Okay, I think we all love the word free. Thank you so much, James, for being with me tonight. I've been speaking to Professor James Chin. He teaches political science. He's also the director of the Asia Institute at the University of Tasmania. This has been Let's Talk with Me. I'm Sharad Kuttan, only on Astro Wani.